Lily Alfeld, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Gareth.
Hey, it's been a while since we've connected, and I can see since then you can add a performance role outside of an athlete on your CV. So tell me and the listening audience a little bit more about your current role with the Phoenix.
Yeah, so when it became apparent that I wasn't going to be involved in this season, and my rehab time frame was going to be a lot longer than anticipated, the club essentially said we'd love to keep you involved in whatever shape or form that may be. And um, as it turns out, there was a big need in the academy space at the Phoenix in terms of an operations assistant in a sense. So I had a little bit of background working in a law firm as an assistant. So it was kind of a natural progression, I guess, to then move into the sports world. So that's been really cool to be involved with the club still in a sense. And while I'm not, I guess, in the midst of that first team in the women's space anymore, I'm still kind of close enough and connected that I get to see the girls frequently and get to, I guess, remain just a part of what is an awesome club. It has such a cool family kind of feel about it, and these people become your family when you're involved and seeing them day in day out. So it's just, yeah, it's been fantastic to stay involved, and also I guess now kind of have an eye on what I want to do post playing. I think there's something I've probably neglected in the past and just kind of, naively, I'll deal with it later. But obviously having this injury has kind of forced me to be like, right, well, what am I going to do next? And this has been a great kind of transition into a professional career post playing.
So it's an operation type role.
Yeah, operations. So I'm helping the operations manager here, Eilish, just with the day-to-day running of the academy, and it's been really insightful. And as a player, you're so naive to everything that goes on. You turn up, everything's ready for you. It's all smooth running, and yeah, this has been a real eye opener. If I ever get back to playing, I think I'll have an appreciation, for the planning and the work that goes on in the background.
Yeah, brilliant. And the Wellington Phoenix Academy, both in the boys and girls, are doing some great stuff. The boys have been a consistent pipeline to the first team and overseas with Sapreet Singh and a few others, and the girls now starting to take shape as well. Like, do you spend more time on the girls' side of the academy or split across both?
I split across both. I'm lucky to get to see both sides of it. While I guess each, the male and female game is unique in its own right, the academy is, really big on, I guess, the equality across the men's and women's space. So yeah, it's been, whatever they're doing in the men's space, they're trying to replicate in the women's space. And we're seeing that now with this first, a whole lot of signings from this, from the women's team into the, sorry, women's first team. So yeah, it's been great to see it and kind of get a picture of what it is, from the grassroots up essentially, and the work that is required to make a club probably sustainable, really. It's such a massive bonus for the club to be able to produce these players and feed them into the first team. So I feel very privileged to kind of get a front row seat at how that all works.
Yeah, it's going to give you a perspective, as you said before, of not just as an athlete developing,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe how other parts of a professional organization, be it coaches, be it physios, be it sports science, be it operations, all contribute to the growth and development along that
Mm.
pathway journey. So, hey, we'll talk about present day a little bit later on. I want to just walk us back to maybe where we first connected. And if my memory serves me right, it was a while ago now. I was fortunate enough to give you your senior debut at 14.
Yes, you were. Yeah, God, that feels like a lifetime ago. I really have to just trying to remember that far back. But yeah,
Good
that would
times.
have been. Yeah, I can still remember that very first cap too quite vividly. I had a shocker of a game. I was so out of my depth. I was so nervous and so shy, and I think I didn't speak the whole game, which as a goalkeeper was very problematic. But yeah, I can remember walking off the sideline and remembering a parent say, "What on earth is this kid doing in goal?" And I think I would have you'd remember probably better than I, that I would have followed on. Was it Vic Hesson who would have been there previously? So I had some big shoes to fill, but yeah, I was very grateful that you picked me up as a young 14-year-old and gave me the opportunity.
Yeah, but filling in Vic Essend's gloves, so to speak, is not bad. He's going on and is a regular with the Football Ferns as we speak. But yeah, I remember that day well. We lost, which is fine. And yeah, I got some pushback from not only parents but a little bit from the club as well. And I said, look, just I look back really fondly with this. So like, just trust me, this young player, and we had a lot of younger players that we're about to bring through as well. Like, this is going to be the backbone of this club and the region and potentially the nation for a number of years. Give us some faith, and wasn't that too many weeks later we played in the Rita Fitzpatrick first round, and we played all the kids against a team and we won. But again, there was a big disapproval from some of the elder stateswomen to say, look, you're not taking this seriously. So yeah, I think you were a big part of that initial wave coming through, and moved on to Mainland Pride, and you were our captain the year we won the first ever title, which is the first of I think 6 in the last sort of 10 years. So yeah, we've done a lot of firsts. Yeah, so how about that time with the Mainland Pride and being implanted as captain and as a goalkeeper? That's not always the common thing to do, but I certainly saw some good leadership qualities in you and the way that you were able to lead the group in your own way. But how did you find being a captain early on?
Honestly, I can still remember you giving me that phone call, and I was shocked. I thought, what on earth is this man seeing in me? I think it had never really been something I'd considered or never saw myself as a leader. And I guess probably didn't make that connection between being a goalkeeper and I guess the responsibilities you have there, and the almost advantage you get from seeing a whole pitch and having a booming voice and being able to communicate without necessarily having to run around constantly. I hadn't really thought about it to that point. So I think you were a massive, I guess, part in kind of getting that wheel turning and making me look at myself differently and how can I actually be not just a player but a leader. But I look back so fondly on those years at Mainland and with the Pride. I think a huge testament to you. You put faith in, like you said, a lot of young players, but they ended up being, growing on, and a core group of players kind of going on and being successful in their own right, making 17s, making 20s. And like you said, it was kind of this beginning of this Mainland era of winning the national title. And yeah, it was such a good experience. And I think, I have you to thank for that massively, because you put in a lot of work and put in a lot of trust and faith in the bigger picture, and I guess realizing it might not go smoothly at the start, but it will be worth it in the long run.
It wasn't just me. Thank you though for saying that. But other people could see your talent, and it was pretty early on. You were selected for the New Zealand under-17s, a cycle early, for the World Cup in Trinidad and Tobago, and then you had another 17s in Uzbekistan, where you were the starting keeper, and then you went on and played for the under-20s in the 20s World Cup in Canada. Talk us through a little bit around what it's like to represent your country, go away to these big events. Your first one was a backup keeper, and then starting keeper, and then a sort of a senior player. So, yeah, what's the learnings, I guess? What's the takeaways? What were the challenges that you found through playing international level football?
I think initially in the under 17s age bracket, it's all very kind of foreign, unknown to you. I can still remember getting my first call up for that 17s camp, and it was up in Auckland at North Harbour. And in my mind, I didn't know what on earth that meant. In my mind, we were going to go train in this big, massive stadium that looked like Eden Park. Like, I was just so naive to what that actually meant. And I guess you knew you were going to World Cup, but what actually was a World Cup? So it was, I guess in my age group, I was really fortunate. We'd had the under-17 World Cup in New Zealand years prior, so I kind of had an inkling of what it all meant, and was lucky enough to see the German team train when they were in Christchurch, and that was kind of the moment like, oh my god, I want to do this. This I have to be a goalkeeper at a World Cup, and so that kind of got the ball rolling. But yeah, well, you're just so naive going into these things, and I think that's almost a good thing. You're a little bit fearless, I see, in a sense, going into a 17s World Cup. But I was lucky, like you said, I was a backup keeper for 2010, so I was able to kind of sit back, take it all in, and then had the opportunity to play in 2012. And yeah, that was just kind of, I think it solidifies you like, I want to do this as a career. I want to play for the Ferns. This is incredible. This is one of the coolest things I've ever done. But like you said, it comes with challenges. I think, there are lots of ups and downs. And I think in those, especially in that really young age group, it's a great time to learn to fail. I think, especially if you have the intention of going into the pro space and to the Ferns, going to college, this is a good opportunity to kind of, I guess, learn about yourself and how you respond under pressure, what you need to be motivated, how you fail, or how you bounce back from setbacks. So I think when I look back in that period, that was probably the biggest takeaway I had, was just almost like setting myself up for essentially, especially in college where I had a really rough time of it football-wise. I kind of look back and think that really helped me in that space.
So there'll be certainly athletes listening to this that are part of teams, right? And you've experienced being a backup or a reserve. So goalkeeping is a unique situation where you got three goalkeepers that go away to World Cup. Very rarely do number two, let alone number three, play. So there's a very distinct role there. But you've also been the starting keeper. What sort of advice can you give to athletes who have a similar context in their own sport, where they might be brought up to an age group above where they're probably not going to play? What can they try and get out of that sort of experience in that time, rather than just, I'm just here for learning? Like, how can you approach that? And then what differences do you think when you're a starting member or a key member in a team environment, and there's younger players maybe coming into your environment? How would you, with your experience now, how would you approach both of those contexts?
I think when you're not a starter, it's almost like you just get this front row seat, and you can see, like, you just have the opportunity to learn so much almost without that same pressure. You'll have someone above you who is going to be essentially ranked high. They probably have more experience. They are probably the better keeper. So you kind of get this example put in front of you of what you need to be aiming towards. So I think in 2010, when I had that experience with the 17s, I had two great keepers above me, and I just got to soak it all in and see how they did it. And then, yeah, when you get into that space where you are starting, I think, that's a quite a high pressure situation to be in. It's yours to lose. But I think, that's what I love about goalkeeping is that pressure. I have to perform every single game, or I could lose my spot, and that could be it. And as a goalkeeper, it is quite brutal. You could be dropped, and that's it. Like, you don't probably get as much opportunity as an on-field player. But I think there's still, even when you are in that space as a first choice keeper, there's still a lot you can learn from those around you. And I think the best environments I've been in is where there is a lot of tight competition in those spaces. I think you just push each other to get better and better and better.
You've been close to the Football Ferns. You've been away with them at the Shebeleys Cup in America in 2022. Didn't quite make the field. So you're a great athlete to talk to, because I assume you're still striving for that next level, that higher level, those high. Just on record, is that something that you're still working hard to do, get back into the Ferns fold?
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'd probably have to hold near a record with with attempts to try to get a cap with the Ferns. I think it's going on, it'll be 10 years this year since I had my first taste of being in the Ferns environment. So yeah, I think I'm yeah, I guess a unique one in the sense that I'm a keeper, but yeah, it's just a goal that I've had for so long, and yeah, it's really dragged out essentially. But I look to the likes of Victoria Essen. I think she's an example of a player who was kind of sitting at number 3 for such a long period of time, and then she, finally got her shot and took it and has excelled with it. So, that is my intention. I would love to do it if I'm able to get back playing. But yeah,
No,
it has been a long journey to here.
no, well, that's good. It's more of a question pointed straight to Yitka. So, Yitka, if you're listening, don't forget Lily Alfeld. And you were certainly on that track, right? That trajectory a couple of years ago. Had a fantastic season at Perth Glory, which we'll talk about in a second. And yeah, I think it's a really important point to stress that you said 10 years ago you were in that environment for the first time. Things don't come easy. Things aren't handed out at high performance level. Players have to earn it, and you said you have to work at it every day to keep it. But your journey might take a little bit longer than the next person, and that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly normal as well. But I think it's testament to you that you're still focused enough and dedicated enough to withstand those knockbacks and keep striving towards ultimately what is your main goal. After, I guess, the Youth World Cups, you headed off to the US, Louisiana State, or LSU. Big school. Didn't have potentially the time and the football environment that you would have hoped or liked or wanted. But maybe just talk around how the US college scene came about. You're the first guest we've had on here that's been through the US system. So what's it like? Is it all rainbows and what you see in the movies, or is it completely different? Just sort of take that as you wish.
So essentially, that I guess I'd had that that plan to go to college from quite young. I think it was probably not so much now, but back then it was a massive option for people looking to go beyond the 17s or 20s. It was definitely an option, whereas now we've got the likes of the A-Leagues, so you could look to stay here in New Zealand. But yeah, that was something I really wanted to do. I think honestly it was probably Bennett like Beckham that kind of put that seed in my head that this was an option to take. But yeah, I was very fortunate. I'd made a connection with a coach through my performances in the Under-17 World Cup. And so I went over and had a visit to LSU. There was another Kiwi, Megan Lee, already there. So yeah, I went over there, and I think when you go into these environments, they sell you the dream. Essentially, that it is like the movies. Like the university life is like the movies. I was very fortunate to go to a school with a lot of funding. They had the best of the best in terms of facilities and personnel. So yeah, it was an incredible opportunity and an incredible experience that I had. But in terms of my football, like you said, it didn't go to plan. I started a bit in my first semester, but first season, but after that, yeah, we had another keeper come in. She pushed me out of my spot, and I just couldn't get back in. So I look back at it in kind of two lights. There was I didn't play. My football definitely suffered for it. I came back to New Zealand probably not where I needed to be to contend for the Ferns. But at the same time, I was in an amazing environment where as a whole athlete you could develop. There was the facility, your gym, your psych, your nutrition, your training. It still was top class, but yeah, just in terms of as a goalkeeper, I needed those minutes and I wasn't getting them. As a person though, I think it was the best thing for me. It was, I don't regret it for a minute. I think I grew a lot as a person. I was able to, as quite a shy person going in, kind of come out of my shell a little bit. I saw some awesome things. I made some incredible friends. So yeah, while it is yeah, my own experience wasn't necessarily great football wise. It was still in a cool opportunity, and I think speaking to other girls who have been in this college journey, you honestly don't know. It's 50-50 whether it's gonna work for you. You know, it's such a hard thing to pick the right university from afar. You know, you just don't know until you get there. But the way I looked at it, it was 6 months. If I liked it, I could stay. If I didn't, I could come home. But you know, I saw value in being there and decided to stick it out for my 4 years.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I went through the US college scene nearly 20
Mm-hmm.
years ago now. So things would have potentially, or I'm assuming, changed quite a bit. But yeah, we've seen a lot of athletes aspire to go down that road for their own reasons. And I had a fantastic time. I would go back and do it again in a heartbeat. But if I'm going as an athlete wanting to head off to the Olympics in football, which is my sport, I wouldn't go. That's my learnings and my reflection. And we've seen players and athletes go of many sports and come back quite soon because it wasn't the right fit or wasn't what they were sold, and others stay and thrive and have really helped their athletic career. And you spoke about, as a person, fantastic experience, education, friends, living away, being abroad. I guess what's the tips or pitfalls that you would stress to younger athletes who are thinking about going to the States in whatever sport they are, to help, I guess, have a higher conversion rate of positive athletic experiences rather than sort of 50-50?
I think doing your due diligence, going into it and trying to find somewhere that will be the best fit for you. It is really tough doing that from the other side of the world. I was very fortunate to go over a visit, but you're in and out of there in 48 hours. So it is a really tough thing to maneuver. But I think I've shot for the best university I could get, but it probably, in terms of where I was football wise, it was, it's hard to say whether I had opportunity later on, I would have thrived in it. But I think just trying to appreciate that you were a big fish in a small pond, and now you're going over there and it's a huge pond, and there's other big fishes over there. So I think just going in with the awareness that you will be competing in an environment that is a lot more competitive than what I found I had in New Zealand, and that you just have to be conscious of that. I think one of the best tips I received from someone was, if you go there, speak, and you get the opportunity to speak to players that are essentially bench players or that they don't see a lot of minutes. Get a feel for what their experience is, and do they still feel like they can grow as an athlete? Do they still feel it's valuable being there? But yeah, I think, like you had said, if I looked back on it and said the Ferns was my immediate goal at that point, that probably wasn't the best place to go. But if I had found a better fit, that could have been different.
Right, let's talk in some specifics, and let's use football,
Mm-hmm.
or as Americans would say soccer, as our
Soccer.
as our context, right? So paint the picture for us. You're on the LSU soccer roster. How many
Mm-hmm.
girls on that roster?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a very long time ago now. I'd say maybe 23, 24,
Yep,
25.
cool.
Yeah.
And how many of those are goalkeepers?
In our class, we had 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I went, it was similar numbers, and we had 4 goalkeepers.
Yeah, not uncommon to have 4, is it? Yeah,
Do
definitely.
you have a reserve team that plays games?
No,
Do you play all year round?
no.
How often do you train?
Uh, it depends what season you're in. So off season, you have more training hours. In season, it is quite limited. So there are only small pockets essentially. So it's not unlimited like it could be here in New Zealand.
Yeah, so the NCAA have big regulations around, because at the end of the day, you're a student athlete, student first and athlete second. So
Mm-hmm.
there's restrictions to keep the playing field as even as possible, because not every school has the same level of resources around scholarships, but also facilities. Yeah, so let's talk about in season. So, the fall season for them, which is generally August through to November. So you're
Mm.
in season. How many weeks of preseason would the team have?
I think it was just a couple, if I can remember, 3 or 4. I have very bad recollection, but it's not long. It's very quick.
3 weeks.
You're only
Generally
three
3 weeks.
weeks. Yeah.
How often were
Yeah.
the girls training per day?
Preseason, you're allowed a 2 a day.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
twice a day, every day for
Yeah.
3 weeks. And
Yep.
now we're into season, right? So how many games a
Hmm.
week would the girls be playing?
You'd usually play two, so you'd go like it'd be a Friday, Sunday, or a Thursday, Saturday, generally.
Yep. And then out of season, or if you're lucky enough to make postseason,
Hmm.
tournament play, that's great. But then season stops. How long would the off season be?
So you break, yeah, it depends how far you get through in post tournament play, but yeah, you could be off anywhere from, I say, 2 to 3 months. Would that sound right? That is very strictly regulated in terms of you. When it's done, and you cannot get on the field until it starts back up again.
Yep. And when it starts back up again, how often would you train? How many sessions a week?
Um, Depends how the coach wants to use their hours, but I would say you would have maybe 5 sessions a week. Would that sound right? And it is also split, especially in America. You have a massive focus on your fitness and your strength, so it has to be split amongst all those components as well. But
Yeah, there's certain
yeah,
things around team training contact hours.
mm-hmm,
So from my recollection, again, you can train as much as you want in the gym, and that's where a lot of the time is spent getting bigger,
mm-hmm,
faster, stronger. But in terms of football hours or contact time, I think it was 2 team sessions a week, and then like one or two uh, optional optional times or small group
mm-hmm,
work. And that's it for a large portion of the year, like 7 to 8 months. So kind of goes back to my point around if you're going to go as a future high performance athlete, be really clear on the
mm-hmm.
environments you go into, and understand all the regulations and restrictions around the investment of your time in your code. Now, we can only speak for football because that was our environment. It could be different for basketball or netball or tennis, but again, there's going to be regulations that the schools and the coach have to apply to. But yeah, again, if that's for you, I'd encourage you to reach out to a recruitment agency or athletes that have gone through the US system because again, there's a lot of great learnings from that. Didn't work out for you, Lily. You came back to New Zealand, came back, set yourself up in Auckland, and rejoined the FFDP program based out of New Zealand football. So, talk us through what that environment was at the time and what it meant for you coming back into an environment where football was sort of the focus rather than football and study.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was. I think I came back from the US once I'd finished my degree. Came back with a bit of an injury, so it was my first year back was you know, a I just didn't kind of get straight back into football. It took a long time to kind of get back into the swing of things. Um, I think I'd also, had a massive hit confidence wise with the state. So just in terms of knowing, trusting myself to play football, and especially, I'd trained a ton, but I hadn't had minutes on the field. So that took a while to kind of get that back and regain that confidence. I then also had to juggle it with a full-time job. So that was, I guess, I had the experience of full-time study, but just working within, quite strict hours of a job was an adjustment. But I think I really enjoyed being back in FFDP. There was a, a really great program that kind of allowed us to progress throughout a season. You kind of saw your own development. You were able to reflect on it. And it wasn't necessarily all about results like it was in college. You're there to win and play, and whereas FFDP, your development was probably, the main priority. So, yeah, I really enjoyed being in that space again, and being back with the Kiwi girls.
Yeah, the fact you had to juggle full-time work or employment is probably not an uncommon scenario for again a lot of the athletes listening to this, striving to make that that leap into high performance, which is where the money is. It's where the opportunities are. And in my opinion, this pre-high performance space, this HPAD level, is the hardest because you need to act and perform and train like a high performance athlete, but without all the trimmings and trappings that come along with it, i.e., the salary for the most part. So, yeah, what learnings have you got or advice around managing a job and becoming an athlete? What are the skill sets, whether it's time management or saying no? Like, what are the things that you would really double down on is make sure you get these things right to give yourself the best opportunity to transition as an athlete, but also maintain the rest of your life as you require.
I think the biggest thing that probably took me a year to really get my head around coming back into this FFDP environment was just being so intentional and disciplined with your time. I think you, yeah, I really honestly think I kind of went through the motions essentially in that first year of training. I was just trying to survive. I would just go to training. Oh, I've got to go to work right now. I've got to go to training. And I wasn't really probably getting everything I could out of it. I think and what I eventually learned quite quickly and got the hang of is, you had to plan your week. You had to go into trainings with an idea of why you were there, what your intention was. You had to reflect post-training. And on a Sunday, you had to get your meals ready and all this stuff so you could sleep the right amount of hours to be a high-performing athlete, essentially. So it was just being, really, really disciplined and intentional with what time you had, because at the end of the day, I had to work a 9 to 5 to pay the bills. But I also had to train for so many hours to be the football player I wanted to be. So, we've already all got the same amount of time. You just have to use it as efficiently as you can.
I guess one of the two big carrots for the FFDP program was to help players transition to full-time professional environments abroad, and that was your next stage. Perth Glory come a calling. How did that come about? Firstly,
yeah, it was something I'd really wanted to do as soon as I went into the FFDP environment, and I had seen quite a few girls kind of go off and be successful in that space, and I wasn't really, nothing was really happening for me in that space, and honestly, like, I'll be quite transparent at that point. I thought, well, how long do I do this? Like, nothing's really happening. It's like a career post football, something I need to really start looking into now. Like, it was kind of something that didn't really seem like it was on my horizon anytime soon. But with COVID, it was really fortunate that obviously the borders were shut down in Aussie, and the international players coming in to play in the A-League was limited. And with that, I was given the opportunity to go over to Perth with Liz Anton and Amelia Simons, and it was the best thing ever. I think it came at such a vital time in terms of me kind of questioning what I was doing and almost feeling like I wasn't really going anywhere with that football. And it kind of just kind of gave me the energy again and that motivation to keep going. And it was amazing. We obviously had a bit of a limited season with COVID, and it probably wasn't the whole professional experience that I'd ended up experiencing the following years. But it was amazing being in an environment where you could just play football was awesome. You could schedule your day to reflect, getting in the best mental space, getting physically in the best space you could, and then all you got to do is at night I've got training, and that's it. And it was, honestly, I was living the dream. It was the coolest thing ever. And I'm so grateful for that time, and I'm very grateful for Perth for giving me the opportunity to do that.
how did that come about? Did you have an agent? Did New Zealand Football help you on that journey?
No, I remember at the time, I think I was playing for Auckland in the National League, and it was actually Tom Samani who'd reached out to quite a few girls. Obviously, he had that connection between here in Australia, and I think Alex, who was our coach at the time, was actually good friends with Tom, and I think he went to him and said, we really needed a defender, we really needed a midfielder, and we needed a goalkeeper. And so Tom asked the question and said, would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. I'd only actually just started a new job. When I ended up having to tell them with about 3 days notice, I think I'm actually going to leave. So that was really tough in its own right. But yeah, it was Tom that kind of made that connection. And at that time, I did not have an agent. So it was pretty simple. I just said, right, yeah, let's do it. And we went over with the knowledge that we might not, get back home for quite a while with the restrictions, especially with WA being a hard border. But it really was just a no-brainer.
Yeah, and you guys were, the big part of that first wave of Kiwi girls going into the A-League Women's, showing that, Kiwis can fly, Kiwis can compete. And I guess, on the back of that, Football Australia and the APL kind of go, oh, okay, maybe it's time to bring the Phoenix in as a women's team as well as a men's team. And, you were the inaugural signing and inaugural captain for the Phoenix, which must be a massive honor and fill yourself with a lot of pride and joy. But yeah, being the first, like obviously your background, your qualities, and your experiences, and it's not lost to me that why someone like yourself would have been drawn back to the Phoenix. But yeah, maybe how did that come about? Because you had a great year with Perth. Were you looking for a change, or was the opportunity to come back to New Zealand too good to turn down, or did they make you a massive offer? Like, talk us through the stage of getting a phone call or an email, and just the timeline around returning back to Wellington.
Yeah, so I had such a great time at Perth. It was my intention if I had the opportunity to go back. And at the time, you would know with the international spots, you only have a limited number of international spots, and you really have to use them wisely in terms of the positions that you're filling with them. And so I had discussions with Perth, and at that point they were, we just need to see how our squad pans out. And so, yeah, I honestly was panic stations. I thought, I'm not going to get a contract in this league again. I thought I'd had quite a good season. But yeah, with taking up an international spot at that time, yeah, it wasn't looking good, and I was really panicking. So when they made this announcement that we might actually get this Wellington Phoenix team in the A-League, it was a massive relief. But then it was also like, oh gosh, I hope I can fill a spot in that team. There are a number of great Kiwi goalkeepers that I thought would have loved to have had that opportunity to do. So I wasn't sure if I was in their plans at all. So yeah, when that became apparent, I had those discussions with Gemma Lewis at the time. And yeah, she mentioned we'd really love to have you as our inaugural signing. And yeah, it was a massive moment of pride. I think as a Kiwi kid, you watched the Phoenix every weekend growing up, and never in a million years did I think that we would have the opportunity to be a Phoenix player in the women's space. So yeah, it was just a bit of a pinch me moment, and there was such an excitement with the announcement of this women's team, and it was such a big deal in New Zealand. It was just so cool to be a part of that journey and to be a part of kind of that I guess history making moment.
So you've been working so many years to get to this sort of point, right? You've done the college scene, didn't quite work out. You came back to New Zealand, grafted away, worked every day, get this opportunity and play really well in Perth, and then this opportunity to come back home to be the captain, to be the first signing. That's a huge responsibility, and you have a fantastic season. Then injury strikes, which for a lot of a lot of high performance athletes, this is a common occurrence, right? So, how is the injury? What exactly is it? And how's the rehab coming along?
Yeah, this was essentially back during my season in Wollongong with the Phoenix. I tore my meniscus. It wasn't to the point where I had to stop playing. I actually didn't know for quite a while that that's what had happened. But up to that point, I had never really had any major injury that kept me out for such a big period of time. And naively in my head, I thought I could just push through it. It's just a mental game. I can just push through it. But yeah, it became quite apparent that it was going to need surgery. I'd had that surgery, and then in my first training back from post-meniscus surgery, I ended up injuring my back. So that's essentially what I'm dealing with now. I've had surgery on that. That was a long process, and obviously back surgery wasn't anything I wanted to jump in at too soon. So I gave it a would have essentially been about 11 months to kind of get itself right, but it never happened. So at that point, we decided surgery was the best route, and that I could still come back to play. So that's really where we're at. It has been a lot longer journey than I had intended, that I thought was ever going to happen. I can remember when I had decided to have the meniscus surgery and that I could miss eight weeks. To me, that was just the biggest deal, and it was devastating, and I thought my world was over. And now looking back, it was such a small amount of time, but it has been a journey that I think, I don't want to say it has happened for a reason, but I think I have learned a massive amount from it. And yeah, it's been really tough mentally. I think my initial injury, that was fine. There was kind of the slide at the end of the tunnel that was relatively quick to get to, but with this back injury, I knew it was going to be more of a longer term, and that has been a bit of a challenge. It's been quite isolating. I've had fantastic support around me, but even with that support, you just feel a little bit separated from the team, and you sometimes feel a little bit hopeless, and it has been just a massive mental challenge, but a great opportunity for me to look at how I deal with that and how I approach things. And I think in terms of just the mental resilience that I've now built, I am very grateful that it has happened in the way it has. I've had this time to kind of rebuild from the ground up, essentially, that mental toughness.
Yeah, I think anything positive or negative that happens to us gives us the opportunity to look and think, what actually am I taking from this point in my life? And it feels like it's the longest time ever, but upon the grander scheme of things, it's only a small one. But yeah, we have the choice, right, to choose to reflect and critically evaluate the situation and what I'm doing with that, and my approach I take to this situation, in your case, is a bad one, or we can choose just to kind of just go day to day. And I think the people that apply themselves with a growth mentality, and you mentioned about support. So tell us about your support network, be it at home or be it around the club. Why has that been important for you?
I think just having people in your corner that you can kind of lean on when it does get tough is just so invaluable. I think they're the ones that can kind of get you out of that, self-wallowing, that little pity party that you're having for yourself. And I think that's good, just to have someone that can kind of call you out on that, or that can give you that, I guess, emotional support that you need. But in terms of getting like a plan in place, I think that's been the biggest thing, is having, these experts and these professionals that have said, right, this is how you can return from, your injury physically. This is how you can return mentally. Like it is such a kind of multifaceted journey that you're going on. It's not just the initial injury that you're dealing with. You do have to kind of regrow your confidence. You have to figure out a way through this. And I think having the support of a psych, the support of a pain psych, the support of a physio and a sports doc has just been, I feel very grateful to have had that. And now, having been out of a professional environment where you are constantly provided that, I just see how valuable it is.
So a lot of athletes, I guess, will have access to a lot of those key support, but maybe the younger athletes listening haven't quite got access to a sports psych, for example. But what other useful support network people around you have contributed positively for you?
Yeah, number one would be my parents. They've just been amazing, and I apologize to them for the number of times I've called them crying and needing their advice, but they've just been my rock through this all. And my family, my siblings have just been amazing, and they kind of remind you just at the end of the day, it's just an injury, it's just a game. You are so much more than Lily the footballer, or you're Lily the daughter, or the sister, or the friend. And I think they're really good in grounding you there. But in terms of, say, getting that mental support, I think just creating a good network around you, having good friends that can support you, encourage you, kind of be that I guess that space away from football is really good too. Having non-football friends has been really beneficial for me, because they can kind of pull you out of it, and it's not your whole life essentially. And then I guess having perhaps a mentor or a coach that you really trust their opinion, it's just great to have them as a sounding board.
Obviously parents are there with unconditional love and support, but beyond just that, the shoulder to cry on, and somebody to bounce ideas off. What other roles have mum and dad and even your siblings played? Because they've been along this journey as well for the last 10 years. So what's worked really well for you, and maybe some ideas that other parents might be able to listen to and go, oh, actually that I might be able to, this has worked for Lily, doesn't mean it's going to necessarily work for my son or daughter, but an avenue to explore as well.
I think when I think about the age of like kind of the FFTP phase, in terms of the support they could provide there, even though you might be 18 and have moved out of home and kind of going on this journey yourself, I think having them there as a sounding board, I think I would encourage them to keep that connection as long as they can, in terms of just talking through decisions that you have to make. I think being quite open-eyed, I think as looking back as an 18-year-old, I was so naive to a lot of things, and I think they were more in touch with reality and what my decisions could mean, especially like, for example, college. I was sold that dream, and then I kind of saw the shiny lights and or what this could be, but they were really good at kind of grounding and let's talk this through. Let's see what this will be realistically. However, I think what's probably one of the most important things in that journey, perhaps from that phase to maybe a professional phase, or into the college system, is I guess recognizing and accepting when your job is done, if that makes sense. Like, you can be there for that encouragement and that support, but once they step into a team, like a professional team, is accepting that you probably don't have that input into their decision making as much. They then have professionals that will help them in that space, like a psych or or even a coach that will be directing them more. But I think once you kind of get to that phase, is accepting that they are adults and they have to make that decision. I've been really lucky that mum and dad have kind of taken that approach and stepped back and said, like, while they want to guide you and kind of be really close in the decision-making process to that point, I think there is a point that, once you do make that leap, you kind of have to take a step back.
Yeah, brilliant. It's a bit like flying the nest, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's a point where you just have to cut that umbilical cord, and I think, I guess being prepared for that moment to come is really important.
But still being there for when you fly back home.
Exactly. And that, especially, in those spaces where you perhaps aren't in a team, or you need advice on your next move, that is great. But just accepting that, when they're in those environments, they kind of, I guess, have other inputs at that point.
If we flip it around to, say, the coaches, that could be a coaching staff, doesn't have to be the head coach, could be your goalkeeping coach. But what's worked for you over this journey that you're still on, by the way, in terms of, speaking directly to that type of audience that will be listening and going, here's an athlete that's, achieved some really good things, youth World Cups, captaincy, professional football, injuries, positive experience, negative experience. So what's the big takeaway for you if you're speaking to a younger version of me, for example?
Um, when I think back at about the best coaches that I've had, or ones that have been really successful and I think have made the biggest impact on my journey, I think one of the biggest qualities would be, I guess, this authenticity and honesty. I think in terms of gaining the trust and respect of an athlete and therefore being able to get the most out of them is super important. And I actually have a story that relates to you in that sense. Is I can remember I'd just been to an under 17 tour away. We were in the lead up to a World Cup, and I think we'd gone to Argentina. And up to that point, I had been a starting goalkeeper. And in this tour, I wasn't performing. I'd been dropped, and I can remember so vividly coming home, and I think it was my first training back, and you gave me this cutout article from the newspaper that was essentially about the goalkeeper who had taken my place, and about how she was basically in line to be the number one starter at this World Cup. And I remember at the time I hopped in the car and I read it, and I was fuming, and I was so like crushed and devastated. I thought, why would he do this? Like, he's just rubbing salt in the wound. But when you gave me that paper, I think you said something along the lines of, here is motivation, essentially. And you were just, I think, black and white told me, look, you may no longer be the starter. How are you going to respond? And I took that article and I kept it in my room and I looked at it every day, and eventually I got that spot back and I started those World Cup. But I think, at the time it stung like anything, but I think I appreciate so much that honesty, and I think it was a huge and a turning point for me, where it wasn't, especially at a young age, it wasn't all going to be okay, and I really had to knuckle down. And I think you gave me that honesty. You didn't pussyfoot around it. You kind of gave it to me hard, and it was, yeah, I can't thank you enough for that kind of, I guess, action that you took, because it was super motivating for me. And I think, while I say that honesty is really important, I do think at that age it is being kind of careful how you deliver that, in the sense that at a young age you're still a very vulnerable in confidence. But yeah, I think just being super authentic and having the integrity and being honest can go a very far way.
Thanks for sharing that, Lily. That's awesome.
Yeah, do you remember that?
I don't. I would have been young on my coaching journey, so yeah, it definitely would have come from a good place, a good starting point.
100%, yeah. And I think, yeah.
The point you make around, it needs to be a skillful intervention around, that honesty. I think, just listening back and reflecting myself, I think coaches can work at the extreme of being brutally and bluntly honest at the detriment of an athlete, but also at the real support of an athlete. I think you need to move along that continuum of honesty and timing of that honesty, and also the person you're being honest with. I think honesty is the starting point, is critical, and being authentic. I think that's enough. I think they're different, but they're both equally as important, where no point trying to be a different coach or trying to fake it, because it just, players are smart enough, especially today, to see through some of those things. But yeah, having appropriately honest conversations around development, around performance, around challenges, around things such as game time, or your performance plans. I think we just waste too much time by not being honest. And at the end of the day, it's the athlete that under our care, or the team that's under our stewardness, that suffers by us not being honest in those moments. So yeah, really, really good point. Right, let's wrap this up with some quick fire questions. So I love questions. So pose a question for me to consider for this week.
I think, as a younger athlete, I would have appreciated, and especially an area that I needed to grow and still need to work on, it would be identifying, a area that you'd like to improve in, and who is someone that you can reach out to right now, I guess, to help with that growth. Whose experience or expertise or guidance would be beneficial in kind of, expediting that growth.
Yeah, I think that's a great question to ask ourselves every 6 to 12 months, right? Because how I answer that now might be quite different in 6 months, or what level of support I need now could be different. So, yeah, brilliant question. Outline one concept or idea that you've come across or you're thinking about that could help us in our daily lives.
I think mine is quite simple, and it is something that my dad has tried to drill into me from the youngest of ages, and it's not in my nature, and I really still do struggle with it. It's just putting yourself out there. I think if you don't seek, things won't come to you. And I think I'm quite hypocritical in that I still struggle to do this, and I really have to kind of catch myself. But it's just, yeah, I think if you don't, you just get left behind. And I think that's become really apparent to me in the last few years. And it applies in sport and in your professional life and your social life. It just, if you don't put yourself out there, things won't come to you.
Great advice. Recommendation of a book, movie, or a podcast, or TV
So
series.
this one, I've been thinking, especially now I'm, intending to play again, but now I've kind of got one eye on that professional development. One podcast I have listened to recently that I found so inspiring was a Between Two Bears podcast with Raylene Castle. She is just one badass woman, and I think I just came away from that so inspired. She's a female in a male-dominated world, and she took on the establishment of rugby league in Australia and rugby later on, and the way she dealt with the Israel Folau saga and just being standing kind of with her values and in terms of a leader, and her leadership style was just so inspiring. So I would recommend that to anyone. That it's such a good listen.
Yeah, big shout out to the Between Two Bears boys. Their podcasts are brilliant. If you're not about it, I would say go and check them out. Plenty of amazing guests, football initially, and then diversified into other great Kiwis of all walks of life. So yeah, good shout out there, Lily. If you had a magic wand, right, and you could wave it around, it would change one thing about the either football in your context or professional football. If you're talking about the Phoenix, what would that wand do?
I think it would be the focus of female health in the women's game. I think this is something that is slowly creeping in now, but for so long, I think women have been almost pigeonholed into an athletic space that is being created for a male athlete. I'm really fortunate to have worked with Izzy Coombs here at the Wellington Phoenix, who is doing a lot of research in this space. And she is one smart cookie, and just I think the potential and the findings that they are having in this is so valuable in guiding the management of female athletes. And I think there's such power in utilizing that and I guess making that more commonplace, not just in the elite professional space, but spaces trickling down all the way to grassroots.
Yeah, nice. And leave us with a quote for the week.
Okay, it's actually a really long quote, so I apologize in advance, but I'll try my best to read it without too many errors. So it is the quote, "The man in the arena." So it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly. I think as someone who struggles with this confidence and being courageous and almost having this skewed perception of failure, I think it's quite a good reminder to, to bugger everyone else. I'm on this journey, I'm doing the thing. And why I might not be quote unquote successful, I think just showing up and being bold and being vulnerable and being authentic is success in itself.
Hey, what a way to end. Appreciate your time. Wish you with all genuine sincerity around your recovery. No doubt we'll see you back on the pitch, doing great goalkeeping things, just not against Melbourne Victory while I'm still here, please. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you put on the Football Ferns shirt one day.
Here's hoping. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for sticking through to the end of this episode. It would mean the world to us if you could hit the like or share button so we can get these amazing insights out to other like-minded coaches, athletes and parents. Cheers.